privilege again to hear from Reverend Chris Bauer. A lot of you will remember Chris. He was the pastor over at First Pres Tallahassee and has done a lot of work here, training officers and that sort of thing. And they're getting ready to go on the mission field, and he's going to tell us about that now. Chris?
Well, it's so good to be back with all of you, and my wife and I have had such a high regard for you and your love for the Lord, your love for His church, and I know my time with you, your leadership, and just you as a church was so special and dear to me. So thank you for allowing us this time to come back. Krista and the boys are over there, and Elise is in nursery. The boys have changed a little bit. Elise has changed a lot. She's a year and a half. And Roman is now 7. Graham is now 4. And yes, they are going with us to Beruit. That is one of the questions that we've received as we received this calling to Beruit, Lebanon. Are your kids going with you? And the answer is yes. But it's interesting how the Lord works in each of our lives. Some people have called us brave, some people have called us bold, but the answer is really that we're just following God. Each of us does if we're seeking the Lord what He calls us to do, whether that's to be in Selma, Tallahassee, New York, the Bronx, which to me is actually a scarier place than Beirut, Lebanon, personally. So, it's not really about where you're going, but it's about who you're serving. And that's really what we're doing, is following our Lord as He's called us to Beirut, Lebanon. As I mentioned to the Sunday school class earlier, most of what people know about Beirut, like myself before we received this calling, is what you see in the news. But there's a lot more to Beirut and Lebanon than what people see in the news. And one of the things that I've learned is that Lebanon is really the only place in the Middle East that allows for what I would call true freedom of religion. It's not exactly the same as in the United States, but it's actually very similar. There are 17 what they call creeds that are recognized in Lebanon, and as a citizen, resident, or visitor, you have to declare one of those creeds to be in Lebanon. I will go as a religious worker, an evangelical minister, and I'm free to preach, teach, share the gospel. In that sense, I can do whatever I want there in Beirut, Lebanon. I can preach on a street corner. Similarly to here in America, I probably would have to be careful on which street corner I do that, because it might be dangerous depending on the street corner, but that would be true in some places here in America as well. But it is a major city in the world. There's 2 to 2.5 million people there in Beirut. It's very cosmopolitan. It's about 54% Muslim, 40% Christian. That may surprise you. Of that Christian, about 27% are what's called Eastern Catholic, about 12% Eastern Orthodox, and 1 to 2% Evangelical Protestant. So I'll be pastoring one of 2 English-speaking international churches. And our church is primarily focused on migrant workers and refugees. Most of the refugees come from the Middle East, other parts of the Middle East, and I'm sure you've heard about the Syrian refugee crisis. They believe there are about 1.5 million refugees in Lebanon, about 500,000 to 600,000 of those in Beirut. The migrant workers primarily come from third world countries, different parts of Africa and Asia, what we would call third world. I don't know that they would call themselves that, but they're not highly regarded by people in the Middle East, so they have a very low status there and are often not treated very well. In just a few minutes, I want to show you a video that describes some of that. One of the ministries that the church started, the former pastor actually went on from the church to work further with this ministry and to build it up. And that's what he's doing now. The church is made up of about 50% migrant workers and refugees, about 25% expatriates from North America and Europe, and about 25% Lebanese who are either married to those expatriates or just want to worship in English. It's really an amazing story because, technically speaking, it's the oldest evangelical church in the Middle East. It was started in 1823 by Presbyterian missionaries from America. They started an Arabic congregation in 1848. Unfortunately, there was a civil war in Beirut, which many of you I'm sure will remember, in the 70s and 80s. And all of the Westerners left during that time. They donated the land and the building to the Arab congregation at that time. But thankfully, the Arab congregation restarted the English-speaking congregation in the late 90s. And they primarily focused on these migrant workers and refugees. And this is what it's become today. It's a flourishing congregation of about 40. And they're just a great group of people who love the Lord, who want to continue reaching out and doing great things for the gospel, to share the gospel with others. Their vision is just that, to share the gospel with residents and visitors in Beirut from all around the world. It's made up of people from about near 20 different nations in the world. And there's actually a map over here in the corner if you want to stop by and take a look at that, at where people are currently from in the church. I wish I had time to share more about the church. I'd love to talk with you more about it after the service. But it really is a great group of folks who want to serve the Lord, who are seeking the Lord. Unfortunately, many of the migrant workers and refugees find themselves in difficult situations, as is the case anywhere in the world. When people are vulnerable, they're often taken advantage of. And that's no less true in Lebanon. So I wanted to take the next few minutes and show you this video about one of the ministries that the church has started. And these are the kinds of things that we're going to perpetuate to help the church continue and to meet the needs there in Lebanon. For those of you in the choir, I'll be happy to show it to you later.
I wish you could have seen this place before it was renovated. It was a rat-infested hole. At the moment we have 16 children. We're building up slowly, but eventually our goal is to take in 70 to 80 children. So I think this project is really going to make a real impact on the community. It has already started to do that. I was helping an Ethiopian girl who was raped by her sponsor and trying to find daycare facilities for her child. And the only places we could find were the children were tied up to chairs all day long. And so myself and a friend decided we have to do something. I said, we don't have any money, but we have to do a daycare. So I was chatting to Robbie on Facebook and said, Frida and I want to start a daycare. We don't have any money, but we're going to do a daycare. And Robbie typed back and said, the money won't be a problem. I was like, oh, that's nice, very encouraging. And then he called me into his office and he said that for a long time they wanted to do a daycare. And so it was like a partnership made in heaven.
It was, and we really thank God for that. That's really what happens, just God brought us together. We had a vision, they had a vision, and together this project just was born.
This little girl Heather was one of the children that was being tied up in the other daycare. So she's our first child from the tied up daycare. And the first day that she was in the water, she was throwing the water around, she was going, Habait, which means, I love it. So we were really excited to be able to have our first kid from that daycare here. Now we're working on getting the others here. This little boy here is a Kurdish boy. His dad died in the war in Syria. He's only been with us about 3 weeks. And he cried when he first came, couldn't hardly put him down for 2 weeks. But now he's generally happy and he's picking up a lot of English, actually. He's starting to understand understand English and Arabic, doing a lot better now. Like happy most of the day now. So
So you're picking up a New Zealand accent or an American accent?
I hope that New Zealand accent.
Well, you heard just a little bit about the situation that a lot of people find themselves in when they go over. Some of them are treated well, some of them, as you heard, are not treated so well. And our hope and goal is to continue ministering to people in need like this. They actually do, as you heard her mention, they hope to have 70 to 80 children. We visited there in July, and the preschool does now have about 80 children in it. They're hoping to expand from there and start more preschools. And our hope is within the church to partner with the preschool to start other ministries like that to the refugees and migrant workers. And there's just such a great need, as you can imagine, with just in Beirut alone, over 500,000 refugees, 300,000 to 400,000 migrant workers. And that's the primary focus of the ministries of the church. And that's actually why a lot of the expatriates that are in the church are there, because they want to help with that type of ministry. So we're hoping to be there shortly after the beginning of the year. Robert, the former pastor, has been gone about a year and a half now, and they've been without a pastor for that long. We're raising support for two reasons. One, they can't really afford a pastor, and also I'm going to be going on a voluntary religious worker visa so they can pay me anyway, legally. So we're hoping to be there sometime shortly after the beginning of the year so that they will not be without a pastor too much longer. And we just love being here with you today. Would love for you to be a partner with us in prayer in whatever way, whatever other way the Lord leads you. And just thank you for allowing us to be here.
Chris and I go back to, I think, 1992. We've shared a long